Hello, and welcome to this Be Heard event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Simone. I'm the founder of Northern Power Women, Northern Power Futures, the Power Platform, and Be Heard, and everything else really. That's like there seems quite a lot. But today I'm delighted to be here with my Be Heard hat on to share with you some fantastic tips and tricks on how to calm your nerves, be your best self, and kickstart your public speaking career. But first of all, I want you to consider throughout this session to register on our Be Heard platform. It's free. be-heard.io. It's being used at the moment by the likes of the Wall Street Journal, BBC, Sky News, and ITN. And we created Be Heard in order to level up the media and events industry. We know that you all always have amazing things to say. You've got passion projects, side hustles, and more, but often connecting with producers can be difficult. Therefore, we wanted to find a way to bridge that gap. And so that's why we created it. We had nothing else to do over the pandemic, did we? So we built a platform. And in turn, this will encourage and enable producers and event bookers to be intentional about the voices that they use in their shows, their conferences, and their events. And with your help, we can encourage better representation in the media and events. Simply go to be-heard.io and register. And you can also store any things that you're doing, podcasts, videos, events. You can add those links on again, so it's almost part of your portfolio building. So throughout the session today, if anyone has any questions, please do comment on the live stream link that you're watching on. So whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end or even during it as we see fit. But now on to today's main event, and I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Lynne Parker, founder and CEO of Funny Women. She's a performance coach, facilitator, speaker, writes for leading newspapers, magazines, and trade journals, including the Huffington Post and the Guardian. Now, almost in its 20th year, Lynne has, as Funny Women, has worked hard to create a vibrant, collaborative community of like-minded women. And fresh from the Flagship Awards last week at the Bloomsbury Theatre, I'm delighted to welcome a friend, an amazing colleague, Lynne Parker. Welcome to Be Heard.
Oh, Simone, it's great to be here. It's great to be here. Lovely.
And how are you doing? Because that was an amazing event. For those of you who don't know, please go online, go on Twitter, check out Funny Woman, and you can see it was, because you did it at the theatre, didn't you? So you were part live, part virtual.
No, we were back in a full sold out theatre, the Bloomsbury Theatre in London, which was really exciting and somewhat overwhelming. We had an incredible show. I'm not the show, it's the acts that make the show. We had 5 awards, and the contestants for the stage award took part on the night. So we chose that winner live in the theatre. And it was our first truly international awards as well. And in fact, it was won by Lara Ricote, who is of Mexican origins and is based in Amsterdam. And in fact, came through our chapter of Funny Women in Amsterdam. So very international, very exciting. And by the end of play today, the whole show will be live for you to watch retrospectively with a few tweaks, but mainly as it went out on the night on Next Up Comedy. And I'll make sure your community, Simone, get that link to share. There is a ticket price, but we are not for profit. So all that money is going back into making sure next year's awards are fabulous too.
So we've known each other for quite a while, haven't we? So since before my sort of Be Heard Northern Power and Power Platform days, back in the days of Women First, back in the days of TED down in London. And
yes, the fear is still with me. Everyone thinks I'm super confident. I'm giving you tips today, but they're very much based on my experience of doing TEDx London. I still fear the fear, Simone, from doing that. Remember that.
But I think there's one thing about that fear, even chatting in the green room prior to this, there's always that sense of nerves. But, I always think there's a sense of it's because you care. If you don't care, then, then you wouldn't feel those nerves. So, we urge any of you watching today, please join in the conversation on social media using the hashtag #BeHeard. And please do ask any questions in there. And Lynne, you talked about, the show not being about you, but actually, I think this is real. You have the passion as I do about giving people a platform and a stage. You know, women, Funny Women going into its 20th anniversary next year. And I know that this is a big passion of yours. And one of the events that you ran for us many years ago was how to stand up to stand out. So, you know, we want this session. This is 30 minutes with your lunch, with a brew. You know, let's kick off straight away with some of those practical things that our audience can do to feel more confident about public speaking, calming your nerves, being your best self, and ultimately standing out and being heard.
Yeah. So absolutely. And a lot of people probably watching this are terrified of public speaking. You know, it is still the number one most scary thing when people are asked. So I'm just going to give you a few tips from my own perspective of working with thousands of female stand-ups who, you know, obviously get fearful and scared as well to go on stage. But I think the most important thing is about being, as women in particular, being comfortable around humour comes with a level of self-confidence and self-belief. And I think women are very empathetic. And I think when we learn to work with that humour, and women laugh very easily and readily with each other, and that's our best way of communicating. It's such a, I hate the word tribe, but in this context, it is like a tribal thing that women group together. Our humour is very collaborative, and my favourite expression, circular. We love to work. You know, we've all networked. We met through networking. That's what women do. We're very collaborative, community based. The most important thing I want to say is relative to humour. Everybody's funny. Everybody in our own way. And, you know, we use humour to empathise, connect with people. And even if you don't think you have a sense of humour, we all know instinctively how to make people laugh. And for example, when you have a new baby and it's crying, what do you do to stop it crying? You tickle the baby, you play peekaboo. You know, it's all about that absolute base instinct to non-verbal, to help them to laugh, because that is related to our whole, the way we work, our endocrine system, and how that all works to keep our mood in good balance. But going back to sort of presenting and whatever, to be honest, over the last year, I'm sure you'll agree, Simone, having a sense of humour has never been more important, really, has it? You know, and we were just chatting about how this space, being able to communicate and work in this way, is a different experience. But I don't know about you. I feel quite comfortable about, not, you know, I'm not a joke teller, by the way. I'm not a comedian. So, you know, my humor is different. It'll be based on relationships of past and things we've done in the past. So this environment is really good for humor. It's a very natural place for it. The other thing about online, and I think I've noticed that a lot of people have been able to use this space to develop their personal style. Comedians call it their persona. Oh, I mean, I have to say, seeing some of these women develop their online comedy persona has been unbelievable. All of the contestants for this year's Stage Award have gone all the way through up until semi-final stage. Every performance was on Zoom. And we used Twitch and other things. So every performance until they did the final, that was the first time they performed on a stage with us throughout the awards. And in fact, one of the acts, it was her first ever stand-up gig. We found out the day after. So, you know, isn't it amazing what you can do in this space? So going back to the sort of comedy role model, you know, persona is all about, you know, what banner you have behind you, Simone's lovely bunting, you know, things like that. They're all about our personality. I sit in my basement office. It is a bit dark and dungeon-like, but I make a thing of it. That's what I do. That's where I work from. You know, I've done everything from BBC News to my own events from this space. So, you know, we have an opportunity with this. Comedians use things like props and silly clothes or silly hair. I'm not suggesting you do that for business, but then I know quite a lot of I know quite a lot of good speakers who have their kind of motif, you know, like Sue Black with her bright red hair, and there's a writer called Zoe Tomlinson who has blue hair, but you remember her because of that. I'm not suggesting you all go and dye your hair a strange color, but you know, if that's your want, fine, what's wrong with it? You know, it helps people to remember you. So I think that's it. So my comedy experience has very much informed how I think we can develop our voices and to be heard within the business sector. And indeed, Simone, I owe you a debt, because you were one of the first people to encourage me to be a bit more, to do more myself. You know, I've always been like the backroom girl, and you did a lot to get me involved with TED and other events. And sometimes we all need that person, that catalyst, to bring it out of you. So, you know, what I would say is look around, look at the people around you, and surround yourself with people that make you feel good, help you build your confidence. Look at the environments in which you can speak in public. You don't have to be polished and word perfect with a 20-slide PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoint personally, but there you go. It's about you as a person. And I think that's what Funny Women has taught me, because I've just seen these amazing women of all shapes, sizes, ethnicities, sexualities, and now countries, just performing in a space and being themselves. And that's what great comedy is, really. It's a enhanced view of yourself. So
you talk about pop-up shop, don't you, Lynne? You talk about like a pop, you know.
Yeah. So there are a few things. I've got a few tips, but what I'll do is I'll rattle them off very quickly, because I think they're quite useful. But one of the things that we do when we do live workshops, particularly for corporate workshops, is think of yourself as a pop-up shop. Here you are. This is me. Do I need blue hair? Do I wear a rainbow sweater? You know, what's my shop? What's my window dressing? You know, particularly if you're doing it on here. Think of yourself as a commodity and what you're actually selling. So it's the basic things that, you know, is it your services? Are you offering coaching? Are you selling a product? And think of yourself in the context of that shop window. And then the overlay with that, if you take my humor model, start by thinking, if you're putting a presentation together, laughter and humor is really good, because laughter makes you memorable. There's something funny. We remember people who are funny, even if they're not very nice people. If they've made a joke, we'll remember them. So, you know, start by thinking about who makes you laugh, what makes you laugh. Think about, you know, how natural humor comes to certain people and what things we find funny. So, you know, kids are very funny. Animals are hilarious. So think about those things. That all helps you to get into your comedy brain. The other thing is, I will say, good news, ladies, as you get older, you get funnier. You care less.
I've been saying that to my husband for months, to be honest, Lynne. Definitely saying that.
All men think they're funny. Let's just go there. They all think they're hilarious anyway. But it takes a woman, you know, into your 60s, like I am now, you know, you just think, oh, I don't care anymore. I really don't care. But I think more importantly, think about the emotional connection you get by making people laugh, because actually what you're doing, apart from sharing and collaborating, what have you, you're actually helping our bodies to react well. So we use, you know, we have an endocrine system. It produces happy hormones and it produces stress hormones. It's how we use those. Comedy versus tragedy. I use that example a lot, because those are the two parameters. They're the two bases on which we work, you know, and you can't have one without the other. So even if you're delivering a TED talk or an impassioned presentation at your work, that sort of ability to create a narrative, a story with comedy, we'll call it comedy for the sake of this, and tragedy will really help you to pack your message. If you go back to your shop window, that's part of your remit. I won't spend.
For an example, how would I do that then? If I was a shop window, how would I make that happen? You know.
Well, now you get me.
So if it's like we break it down, don't you, into, you know, sort of that, sort of your best bits, don't you? And it's about what's your personality, or, you know, what's the things you talk about, the you know, even that, what you're, you know,
attributes, you know, what are your skills? So your shop window is, okay, what am I good at? What are my USPs? Well, increasingly, I'm having to use the USP of being an older woman in the workplace. I think, personally, I think that gives me gravitas, and I'd like to think I care less about what people think. I don't really, but it's those things that I bring to the party or the shop window. I know with you, Simone, I always think of you as terribly well organized. I think of you in your naval uniform. That's a perfect shop window example, because the minute you see somebody in uniform, you've got that sense of, oh, they know what they're doing, you know.
It may make like a little, what do you call it, like a little jigsaw up of yourself. Is that what it is? And you think, right, well, I'm going to be a bit navy here, I'm going to be a bit red lipstick over here, I'm going to be a bit bunting that sits in my head, and then I'm going to be a bit northern here. Is that and that's elements of being your best self, isn't it?
It is. And I think that comes back into my comedy experience, because if you look at a comedian, they do all of those things. They'll play on the fact they might have been in the Navy, they might be a bit northern, they like red lipstick, you know, all those things are part of your selling points. You know, they're the things that make you different. And you know, it is, I hate to say it, but even the public speaking market and the business market is competitive. You know, people say to me, oh, it's probably much easier in comedy. Well, it's only easier because people are very openly competitive in comedy, and they just say what they think. And so in a funny kind of way, that's great. But my battle has been really about taking those things back into the workplace, because the workplace people are still a bit hesitant about being very kind of upfront. And I've for years have been accused of being, you know, blunt, aggressive, whatever, because I say it like it thinks. I've always been the same. I just happen to now have grown into the world that suits my personality. Finally, took 40 years, but I got there in the end. You know, and I feel very comfortable in that world. But there, even so, there is still a level at which you can go to. There's a lovely question, Simone. Can I answer it?
Yeah, I can see that. Do you ever hear the voice in your head that tells you to be quiet and not say anything? If so, how do you silence that voice? And I think it's a really great question, because I think I've just drawn on a little square, like I've almost tried to break myself down into 4. And I think we talk about this, about bringing your whole self to work, and we don't always think people do that in a business environment. I think over the last 18 months, I think we've been able to do that more than ever, haven't we? Because we've been able to be in our bunting fest or our basements or whatever. So how do we silence that voice? How do we give ourselves that confidence?
That's a classic. And I often use that when we're talking, when I run my workshops. I run a workshop called Stand Up, Stand Out. In fact, I've got one on Saturday, live and in person at the Groucho Club in London. But one of the exercises that I run is all about how you don't overthink it. So what that experience is your brain is telling you not to speak, but you want to say something. Our filters as women, because we have a much busier prefrontal cortex, we fill our brains with a million things, because as we all know, we're brilliant at multitasking. But that downside of all that multitasking and overthinking is that we often don't get out what we want to say. And I'm not dissing men at all. Men's brains are just wired slightly differently. So, you know, they're much more goal focused. So if they got something to say, they say it. Whereas we spend, by the time you've thought about what you're going to say, the moment has passed, and we've all been there. You know, being at an event or a conference, you've got a great question, but you think, oh, should I put my hand up? Should I put my hand up? And then you put your hand up when the question's gone away. And that's terrible. One of the things that's really good about conferences now, I think you've done it, Simone, is they will have a big screen with the Twitter feed up.
Yeah.
So, and the other, you know, so you can put your question up there. But the other thing about that is, so being in a meeting is one thing. I mean, in answer to the person who asked the question, whose name I haven't got here, you've just got to do it. It's a bit of a just do it. Don't overthink it. have a go at it. And unless you try it, you won't know what people's reactions are going to be.
Absolutely. And it's about joining the conversation. Like you say, sometimes it's, I'm going to come back to Elena in a second, but I've got a great comment here from Debbie Topping where, she uses stories, e.g. me accidentally flying a Cessna along Kennedy Space Center runway when the shuttle was out. Who knew it was a military airspace then? Our story's not humor as such, a way forward. It's storytelling.
Debbie's obviously, I feel like she's been to one of my workshops, because one of the first exercises I do is called Something You Don't Know About Me. And that is a classic thing that I want to hear from people, because that's really interesting to me. So there's too many answers. So in entertaining, yes, you don't have to be entertaining. Don't try and be entertaining, because that is the worst thing. You're putting yourself under pressure, and you're not there to entertain. You're there to communicate. So that's number one. Number two, our stories define us. Absolutely, what Debbie says. Those things are the thing. That's what makes you different to me, different to Simone. Simone's stories are very different to mine. They're all valid. We've all got something really, really useful to say. So make sure that you don't hide away. And the other thing I want to say, which I think is really important, and I learned very early on, I've always done lots of networking in my professional life. And I think I've been through various stages: pre-kids, kids, trying to juggle work, kids, then post-kids, and now whatever I am now. The one thing is that I would say to anyone, just let everyone know you're in the room. And if you sit at a conference all day and you don't go and chat to somebody, or you don't ask a question, or you don't put something up on the Twitter, no one would know you're there. So, say something.
And I think it's worth social media. You can have your...
Yeah.
Sorry, Lynne.
I guess I don't know how many people are on here now, but we now know who Debbie Topping is, because she's given us a brilliant story. I mean, I'd love some more stories if anyone's got any.
Well, we've got Elena here has said, how do you find it? Kind of totally links on to the last question as well. How do you find the right balance between being heard for your messaging as opposed to because you're entertaining? So you're the jazz hands in the corner, but actually, what did they have to say? I can't quite recall.
That's a really good point, because that's what I call content over substance. And we get, obviously that's something we look for in comedy a lot, because some people think they'd be fabulously entertaining and lovely people, and they would make a brilliant host of a comedy night, but they're not necessarily the best person to deliver a 5 or 10 minute comedy set. And that is, so both are, by the way, totally valid. Some people are good at both, and some people are not. Classically, I'm a last minute merchant. I'm an improviser verbally, not a physical improviser. I like to go with the moment. So that's why I love running workshops. That's why I love coaching, because I'm a facilitator. I'm the person that kind of likes to bring people out. So I don't think of myself as an entertainer. I think of myself as a facilitator. So in the comedy world, you have people who are brilliant at hosting and brilliant who are delivering 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes of comedy. So that's kind of the analogy. And, be cool with what you are. It's fine. I mean, I said earlier about you getting me to do a TED talk. I found that difficult because it's not my natural area. I'm not used to talking to myself, believe it or not. for 10 minutes solid, or learning a script or anything like that. I find that really difficult, and I'm honest about it, and I recognize that in other people as well. So yeah, that's kind of the analogy. I hope I've answered the question.
No, and I think we talked. There's a great quotation. Laughter is the closest distance between two people, and it really can be that leveler and make people feel comfortable. And I think humor can calm both the speaker and the audience. But what's the role in humor in connecting with each other?
Well, it's huge, because when we laugh, it's one of the basis instincts. We laugh together because we're familiar with something. And if you think about all the top comedy things, from Ab Fab to Mr. Bean, just I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but anything like that, we will often, pub talk. What did you watch on television? Oh, wasn't it? I guarantee. Wasn't it funny when? That's most people's benchmark. Or comedy and drama. comedy and tragedy. People, you know, the things that get the best hits and get the most discussion about them are, unfortunately, the world's greatest disasters and crises, and then something that's funny or whatever. I don't really like the whole celebrity culture, which is all about how you look and, you know, that kind of thing. I feel very comfortable in the humor environment because to me that people are communicating through humor. Whether someone's lost 20 stone and wearing a fabulous Versace dress is not of interest to me. I know it is to lots of people, but there's a whole different mindset around humor. And people, you know, politicians, we haven't talked about them.
Oh. Let's leave that in Brighton. Let's leave that in Brighton this week. I'm just conscious of time running out. So there's a few things. Really, please do keep the conversation going on social media. We'd love to know what your personas are. Please do share that because I'm really fascinated by that. Debbie, thank you for coming back. You'll always remember me as the person who had to quickly be very English on the radio and apologise to avoid interception jets and a big fine. Got allowed to fly along without landing. Brilliant. Sarah Jameson, I think this is fantastic. This is a great question. We've already alluded to this. You know, returning to face-to-face networking feels daunting. Do you have any tips for starting conversations with people that you don't know? You know, you've just done a massive event last week. You had theatre. You also had people, you know, sort of virtually as well. But how do you use that? How do you know, the confidence factor comes back in. It's not about going in and cracking jokes, is it? But
we had lots of queuing last week. So first tip is when you're in the queue, strike up a conversation with the person in front of you, even if it's just to say, oh, it's a bit of a long queue. Where are you from? You know, or commonality, you know, what are you both doing? Are you sitting at the same table? I'm not very good on these kind of, you know, these 1 minute power pitch things. Sorry if everyone loves them, but, you know, I'm all for the conversation about asking people who they are, what they are. I will often start with, where are you from? How did you travel here? I think that kind of
weather and travel every time is great, isn't it?
You've got it, you know. And then when you've got people's confidence, you know, and it's about that common experience. And if you go in and go, oh, you know, here's my business card, and you know, I've been 20 years at a famous bank. I'm switched off. You know, I really am. I think most of us are interested in people. We connect on a very humane level, and even more so coming out of lockdown. I think we're all desperate to have a conversation with people. And our husbands, you know.
I'm so conscious of, we're literally in our last minute or so. So just that one takeaway. What's the one thing that people can do your one thing that people can do watching this today or watching back that can help them be heard and stand out?
In a situation where you've got other people around you, don't be self-centered, be generous, ask them about them. I have been at many events where I've had a whole conversation with somebody about them and then they've forgotten to ask me. So if someone's nice to you and asks you about yourself, then ask them back. Don't just go on about yourself. It's a partnership. Conversation is a partnership. It's between you and me, and we're both valid and we're both interesting. So just, you know, that's the most important thing. There's a couple of questions. I'm going to just see if I can
answer. From Max, actually. So we've got...
when we focus on one of these things, we can do the rest of the same. Oh, Max, it's because you're a man.
Oh, we don't know that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Max is a man. I'm assuming it may not be.
Everyone is welcome at our event.
Yes, exactly. But Max, whoever you are, when we focus on one of these things, we can't do the rest. Don't worry about that. I think that's an overthinking. I don't think you need to do that. You don't need to strengthen anything. Live in the moment a bit more. You know, we've spent the last 18 months on these screens and what have you. If we've learned nothing, it's about, you know, what have you been doing? There is just a big world out there with amazing, interesting people, and it is our job to find out about them. You know, ask them about them and then let them ask them about you.
It's the story, and I think this all goes back as I'm literally trying to wrap up with a minute to go. Max, please do keep the conversation. Get in touch with us. Lynne will reach out to you on social media.
Yeah.
Any of you haven't asked a question, like Lynne says, join in the conversation here. We will keep this conversation going. Thank you so much. There is so much to that we've got through in that 30-minute session. Thanks to everyone who's joined us for lunch today. Thank you so much. Remember, Be Heard is a free platform you can use to get your voice out there, making it easier. You know, no one is an expert in this, but actually the most important thing that we brought, Deborah's brought into the conversation, have your story told and be memorable. Lynne, thank you so much for your top tips. We're going to share your coming events coming up. Quick plug.
Yeah,
10
we've
seconds.
got Northern Power Women members might be interested in the Women in Comedy Festival, which takes place in Manchester from the 1st to the 10th of October. Our event is on Sunday, the 10th of October.
But a massive final thank you to you. Thank you for everyone who shared their questions with us today. Join on the conversation at BeHeard_IO and use the hashtag BeHeard. Massive thanks, Lynne Parker, for the women. Catch up with everything around the awards, get involved, and please stand up to stand out, and don't forget to be heard. Thank you so much for joining us.